So I wanted to talk about public testimony in the suspense files in the California State Legislature. Now, when I first began lobbying 30 years ago, legislators presented their bills regardless of whether a measure was slated for the suspense file. In fact, there were many Senate and Assembly Appropriations Committees that lasted most of the day and sometimes into the evening as authors, witnesses, and committee members debated not only the fiscal but also the policy implications of a bill or measure that was presented for their consideration. Over the last 2 decades, bills slated for the respective suspense files have almost always had no author presentation. In fact, some fiscal committee chairs in the past have openly discouraged authors from even presenting their bills that are candidates for the suspense file. Now, whether this is a good approach or bad is, of course, subject to debate. The topic here I wanted to cover is how public participation takes place on suspense file bills. In both committees, authors, of course, are free to waive presentation, that is, to present their bills, and the vast majority do waive. When an author presents his or her bill slated to be sent to the suspense file, the committee handles the bill just like a policy committee does. In other words, the bill's author presents the measure, and then up to two primary witnesses in support or in opposition, usually limited to no more than 2 minutes, followed by some Me Too testimony where individuals state their name, affiliation, and whether they support or oppose the actual bill. And then the measure is sent to the suspense file for a vote on the later scheduled day. However, what happens when an author chooses not to present his or her bill in the fiscal committee? Is there still an opportunity for public testimony before our fiscal committees? The answer is yes, but with differences between the Assembly and Senate appropriations committees. How does each committee handle those bills, which represent, I don't know, 98, 99% of the bills on the suspense files? That is where the author waives presentation and no one appears at the hearing. Well, in the Assembly Appropriations Committee, all the suspense file bills are read by the committee secretary in numeric order. Once that action is concluded, the committee chair allows members of the public to generally state their name, affiliation, and position on one or more bills. In the Senate Appropriations Committee, each suspense file bill is announced in file order and all the author's bills are done at the same time. The committee chair then allows members of the public to testify in support or in opposition. Individuals are advised to address the fiscal concerns on the bill rather than the policy arguments. In both fiscal committees, therefore, public testimony is allowed on all measures, albeit in different ways.